Stand, join us, pledge allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a reminder, anyone has a cell phone, please can silence it. Thank you. Can we have the roll call?
Ms. Ruska, Dr. King, Ms. Sierra. Here. Mr. Smithing.
Here.
Ms. Towner.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Gretchen.
Here. This time we have recognition.
We have a one recognition, and that is Mr. Todd Friedrich. If Todd could come forward. On Wednesday, June 20th, the Wednesday Journal Riverside Brookfield Landmark held its 4th annual Night of Champions, and Todd Friedrich was awarded the Coach of the Year award. Todd coaches girls water polo for us. He used to be our head swim coach as well. He does a great job as a physical education teacher and as a head coach for our girls water polo program. He's built that program up. Now we have 2 levels, which is why we have multiple coaches, but we have a JV and a varsity girls water polo team. So congratulations, Todd. And thank you for coming tonight, Todd.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Really appreciate
Take some cake.
Take some cake.
it. Take some cake, we got it for you.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, we have reports. I have nothing to report on President's report, Superintendent's report.
You know, I have no updates on curriculum, facilities, finance, or personnel policy met today. I will put the press packet 98 on the agenda for approval in August. There was really no changes. It's pretty much all the recommendations from IASB. I did modify one policy, and I'll bring those changes to the board at the August meeting. So that should be a rather easy review for the board.
Great. Principal's report.
Our first residency day is Thursday from 12:15 to 8 by appointment. As a reminder, all families are required to complete this process by making an appointment online and attending one of the 3 residency dates, which the other 2 dates are July 12th, 18th, and 24th. And students should also attend with their parents so they can get their ID picture taken and receive their schedule as well. We're also busy planning for the start of the school year. This year today we met with the new Student Association Exec Board. And they're already busy planning freshman orientation and homecoming. And you'll see when you hear from all of them in September that they have a lot of good ideas for increasing school spirit, and they're really excited about getting started for next school year. That's all.
Okay.
Chief Financial Officer's report.
Okay. I would like to highlight the June 2018 financials. This was the last month of our current fiscal year, so that represents 100% of it. If we look at board book page 8, we'll go over the June monthly financial report. Total monthly revenue for all funds was roughly $620,000. Operating revenue for the month was $563,000. Our big revenue sources that came in were general state aid payment, special ed transportation payment, and federal special ed private placement. On the expenditure side, we had roughly $3.1 million in expenditures. The operating expenditures for the month were $1.1 million. Out of our expenditures, our salary and benefits was $1.45 million. We had a bond and interest payment in June for $1 million, and our out-of-district tuition was $127,970. If we look at the operating fund balances at the end of the year, you'll see that we had 15.7, and if we take out the 3,000 that's restricted by the board, that leaves us with 12.7 million in operating fund balance.
Which is roughly about 50%, 49%?
Pretty close to that, yes. If we move to the financial statements that start on page 9, the first page will go through what the beginning fund balances were for all funds, plus the revenue, minus our expenditures. you will see our operating funds had a surplus of $3.636 million. Just a reminder that we did receive a $3 million working cash bond. So if you exclude the $3 million working cash bond out of there, the surplus for the year was $636,958. If we moved,
We had budgeted what last year?
it was budgeted at a deficit around $300,000.
Okay, so that's a $900,000 swing.
Yes.
What accounts for that 900, Scott?
Out of the 900, the additional tax revenue that we received after June 30th that hit in July, there was also an increase in general state aid that we did receive, and the state made 5 payments this year. Normally they make 4. So we received 2 payments from, the remaining payments from FY17, and then got 3 payments in FY18.
So how much of the last year's state payments, do you know how much roughly that was that we had budgeted last year that came in this year that was not budgeted?
I'd have to go through
Roughly?
and track it.
Okay.
I'm not really 100%.
The taxes were roughly 600, correct?
Yes.
And then the reimbursement was a little over 110.
Yeah,
Roughly.
maybe 110, maybe a little higher than that.
Okay,
And
so
then
that's already
general state aid
700,000.
was probably another 100.
Okay, and that's the new formula, so there
The
was
new
no
formula.
historical to go off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest chunk is the 600 in the tax.
In the tax
taxes.
collection.
All right.
All right, so I gotta talk to, I got a suggestion for that when we get to the budget part.
Okay. As we move to the revenue, you'll see in our operating funds, everything came in over budget on it, which is a good thing. I know we underestimated some of the revenue at the
Yeah.
start of the year.
Let's be careful how we say that's a good thing. In a perfect world, we want them to match, right?
I
It's
understand, but
impossible,
it
but-
is impossible to get truly and capture it within 1 or 2% of
Okay.
what you budget.
Okay.
It's obviously better still to get more revenue than not get the revenue, so you're,
Right.
but as you can see, everything kind of falls in place with anywhere from 101% over to 6% over.
The big one was the 112%.
That was transportation. That one was pretty good. We did receive that last payment. That one was quite significant for special education reimbursement for from the state. So that did put us up a little bit higher to get to 12%. But the big one is the ed fund, because that's our largest fund.
Okay.
On the expenditure side, if we look at our operating funds, everything was pretty much right at budget. We had one was higher, was IMRF, FICA. But the other, the 2 big main ones is our operations and maintenance and our education fund. And education came right at budget, and our operations and maintenance was just slightly under. The overall operating funds were under by $62,000, pretty close to what was budgeted. That I think is, a pretty good capture of what our actual expenditures were versus budget versus actual.
So if we add the 62,000 to the 937,000 that the revenue came above what we budgeted, it's almost exactly $1 million,
Mhm.
right?
Do you have any questions submitted on the financial report?
Nothing on that portion of it. If we move on, the student activity accounts are in there. There was a question submitted at the last board meeting to track a 3-year history of the testing activity account. That is in your board book, just showing you what expenditures and what revenue was collected in that particular account. There has been some years where certain items were not charged to that account. So I know there was some significant concern that account was sitting at over $100,000. It is currently at $60,730. With everything now in place, we'll be spending down that money to getting it more closely to just slightly over in the positive, but spending that down.
Before you go on, unless you're gonna answer, we talk about the budget. For Fund 10, on page 12, for the current levy, we're $253,000 under budget. Do we expect to recover that $253,000 in the next couple of months?
I talked with our district auditor on that.
Yeah.
And what to do
Well,
with.
the district auditor doesn't know if we're gonna collect funds in the next 2 months.
I understand, I'm
does
just trying to get a better perspective on that money, because there was a question about, do we carry that over, do we not carry it over, that was submitted. Per the auditor and per the way to budget on a cash basis, you can't expect to get that, you just have to budget moving forward on a cash basis.
it? Okay, well, that doesn't answer my question. If we budget on forward on a cash basis, do we expect to get the $252,000 in the first couple of months of 2019?
I do not know that. I do not know when Cook County is going to release
But
taxes.
are you expecting it to
You
get
know.
into this current school year? Even though it was budgeted last year, is it gonna
I'm
come in?
hoping to capture all those dollars.
They're
from
gonna
the
come
tax
in this
revenue.
year. You hope. You don't know.
I
but-
don't know, but I'm.
But you're hoping.
yeah,
We're
you're-
based on historical, we probably will collect it.
Probably.
So we don't have it in the proposed budget that we're going to vote on to put out to the public, but we're going to know before we approve the budget if we collect the $252,000 for the final budget for 2019, right?
If we receive it.
If we receive it and what tax year it is. Because it'll come back to me from the county telling me what tax year it was. So I'll have to see if it was 2017 taxes that come in. Because there is a potential that 16 taxes could be coming in.
16?
Yes.
Well, we talked
So-
about that before,
Mhm.
that whether we should record it based on the year it's coming in.
And we do.
No, we don't.
We do per what's in there.
It's just
Current
we
year
just-
will be, current year, it shouldn't be current year anymore. Current year will be 2018 taxes that are coming in our new budget. The prior year taxes are anything prior to that. So it'll be 17, 16, 15. We do collect payment in multiple tax years that all hit under prior year tax
So
levies.
I think the biggest thing, Scott,
Hold on a
is,
second, before, in the budget, when you ask us to approve the budget day, you're going to have 2 line items for each of the funds, prior and current.
Mhm.
The prior is the first collection during that fiscal year, right?
Yes,
So we're saying it's prior because it's
because it's
last
not
year's assessed.
2018. That's how it works. Our current year will be our 2018 levy, which will be the first installment, which will be in March of 2019. That's what current year will be.
And then the prior is going to be
It'll be
any
this,
assessment
anything
that was
from
made-
now until,
Hold on a second, you gotta go back, not forward, because the second assessment for 2017 is gonna be paid
In
starting in
August here.
August of 2018, right?
mhm,
So that's gonna be the prior,
yes,
and any collections we have for prior periods that
Yes.
come in, right? So when you did the budget for the prior, you did it based on what we assessed to collect for the next 2 assessments, right?
yes,
But we're going to get we expect to collect the $252,000, right?
that's what I'm expecting.
But we're not adding it into the budget right now.
No, I
At
do
this
not
point,
have,
we do
I
not.
do not have it in there. I'm basing it off of the extension that I'm believing is their 2017, plus I'm also estimating then our 18 levy.
I think what Tim's saying though is last year in September when we talked about this, and so if we received something from the treasurer like we did last year, we should, before the board takes formal action approving the budget in September, we should include those dollars in the prior year number. And that's something, we debated this as a board in a public meeting last September, I believe it was. And we still, I don't know if we ever reached a final decision as a majority of the board. But I think that's what Tim's saying, even though he understands the prior year is the the second collection of last year's levy, or the previous year's levy. If we get that 250 before September, we should account it, since it's it's a cash basis budget, and list it, so let's say right now we have a $200,000 deficit. If we receive that $200,000 and it's all from stuff from 16, 15, 14, whatever it is, we should account that, even though the auditor is going to accrue it, we should account it in the cash side of the prior year line item.
Let me make sure I understand this again. So in the budget, it shows the 2018 assessment, right?
Yeah, that would be our
Of which
current.
one of them is going to be collected beginning in March of 2019.
19.
And one in August, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at the prior, for your budget for this Fund 10, it's going to be the proportional share, not of what the levy is. It's going to be the second payment for 2017 that we're going to collect starting in August, and the first payment for 2018, right?
That is correct.
And that's how we picked them up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the second one, or the prior, will also include, what we'll actually collect is any carryover
Yes.
from any prior years, which, before we finish.
In theory, yes.
Why isn't it in theory? Don't every year, I mean, I asked you, we're 252,000 below for the current one.
But remember too, though, that 252,000, that was a estimate
Yeah,
from the previous year.
right.
So you're basing it off of that budget number was absolutely correct. And there could be some margin of error in that
Well, of
budget number.
course.
Because
It's
it's
not
not
gonna
an
be
exact
exactly.
number with it, because you're
Well, let me put
trying to
this-
capture, there's things that are out there that can happen with, for example, capturing new EAV that could come on, which then the district is entitled to, and that may increase our
You don't
levy
have
mark.
You don't have to explain to me that no budget number is going to come in exactly. It's rare that any line will come in exactly. But because that's what we estimated, we think it's going to be in the ballpark of the 252, right?
It should, yeah.
Okay, so if it's in the ballpark of the 252, we expect to collect that. Then there might be part of the second one that we don't get, or the first part of the assessment, the levy for 2018, we're collecting in 2019, we may not get, but because that's 55%, and the other one is 45, it tends to give us, if we collect this and there's not a drop down at the end where we don't collect it, we're going to be 252 more, our deficit will be 252,000 less just for that one line item, right?
I would rather not budget it. I would rather that we can always explain it as a variance, because we don't know. Right now, the last couple of years, our collection rates have gone up from 98% collection rate to 99.5%. We don't know if we'll collect this 250 or not. So
But we'll know before we approve the final budget.
I understand that, but I'd rather that we come through and budget as the way we've been consistently budgeting. What I would suggest is that we show, that if we do get to 250 or we get 200 or we get 100 of it, we can always show that we budgeted a deficit of X plus revenues that we budgeted last year minus revenues we didn't get in. Because what are we going to do? We're going to budget now 250 out of the current year?
And what if it doesn't come in?
Anticipating that we're not going to get, I understand you're saying because we know what we know. I think we have to go with the budget.
Well, then let me ask a different
Because we have expenses on the other side too that we're basing on what we say our levy's going to be on.
Well, I'd ask if the other, I don't necessarily, Gary and I usually agree on things. I don't agree with him on this. We have every year since maybe the first or second year, when the year's up, we have a tremendous amount more surplus than we estimated. We had $1 million this year, and we only have a $20-some million budget. It's 5%. I suggest we look back before we approve the final budget on the last 5 years and show us what did we estimate as a deficit.
I think a lot of it was due to that we always budget a certain amount of refunds in there. I know in the early years we were budgeting almost 700,000 of refunds.
Well, let me make my suggestion and people can agree or not agree. But I think we should look and say, what did we start for our budget, initial budget, what did we say our surplus or deficit would be? And at the end of the year, what did we come in of revenues above and below, just a total for the operating, expenses above and below? And how did our overall, like we did this one, come up? Like we did this one, we were 630 above on revenues, we were 762,000 ahead on expenditures. And we came in 700,000 surplus, and we estimated a 300,000 deficit. That was $1 million. I think this one might have been the biggest one, but I think if we look at the last 5 years, we're always that way.
Well, this,
I thought that when we talked about this last time, and Kevin had brought up that we consistently say that our expenditures are going to be high and the revenues that come in are going to be a little lower. You know, we do it that way so that we don't spend too much and count on too much, right? Like,
Right. I think the one thing I think Tim's asking for, though, is when the board takes action at the second week of September, Scott will have received information from the treasurer's office, at least in July and August, of tax dollars. And some of those may be from the prior year, and that's money sitting on hand. So I think at the minimum, I think what Tim's asking is if we know we got an additional 100,000, let's say it's from 2015, why aren't we adding that 100,000 to the prior year line item in the budget? Is that correct?
That's three things. That's the main one. The second one is I think this information is useful, and the third one is there's 7 of us. Maybe the majority agrees. I don't think it makes sense to always underestimate revenues and overestimate expenditures to show you're coming in better. And if you get, I keep saying it, as the budget gets tighter and there's new board members on here, what if they say, the majority say, we aren't going to approve a deficit, which they could do. Some boards do that. And we've got this practice of estimating a deficit when we don't really think there's going to be a deficit. It's a more comforting to people to know we aren't going to spend a deficit at the beginning of the year than to find out, well, here, we did it this way, but you know, when the year's over, we'll probably come in positive. I personally don't think that's the best way to do it. And I think a big part of it is getting our handle on, I mean, you're going to explain certain things. You couldn't expect or anticipated some of the government payments that we got more. You just don't know. You can't estimate them better.
right.
But this is the 8th budget I work on. I still don't think we understand how the revenues come in on our big item, which is our property taxes. We still don't understand why there's a carryover, how much it is from the prior year into this year, and what will be adjusted, what we won't collect in it. And that's often one of the biggest ticket items on the difference here. But again, I'm just one person. If the other 6 don't think this is worthwhile, I'm not suggesting we should do it. I just think we're short-selling ourselves and our process of what we're telling the community if we just say, well, let's underestimate expenditures and overestimate revenues and let's see how it plays out at the end of the year. I just personally don't think that's the best way to do it.
I don't think we ever do that intentionally, Tim. I remember when we first came on the board, we did have high refunds. And it was only after a few years when we realized that we weren't giving back tax refunds to the extent we had in the past.
On that one item.
On that one item.
On the refund item.
Right. But I don't think we ever intentionally overestimate expenditures so that we will come in on cue. Most of the time, we are trying to get the numbers, but we can never nail down what we're going to get for reimbursements for transportation. We can never nail down what we're going to get for Title Chapter 1 or whatever they call that. We can never nail down exactly how much we're going to get back on our tax. If they're going to collect 99. And nobody has a crystal ball to know that.
We could get pretty close to what our
think we
property
talked about this
tax
last-
collections are.
but if we take the approach that we move in last year's revenue into budget, doesn't that encourage the board to spend more?
Why?
Because now all of a sudden you brought 250,000 into the current year, and now what happens if we had budgeted break even? Now it's 250 over.
Well, does anybody in the board approve expenditures because we have more money, spend more?
Deficit spending, right? So
Yeah.
We're saying, I mean, last year I sat here, so I'm not comfortable with deficit spending, and everybody said, oh, no, revenue will come in, it'll be fine. And it did. So, to the point is, we did kind of fake it last year. It's hard to trust it when it's 3% wrong. What was the number?
600,000.
What did you say, 5?
Just from taxes.
Right.
But how do we
But I
predict
think
it?
what,
Well,
We knew that
used some
600,000
historical
we
average.
knew
used
that
some historical
600
data.
we
And
knew that
do-
600,000 before we even approved the budget in
Yes, we
September.
did, most of it.
Because we got those payments. I think,
Well, let me say, before you go that, I personally think it would be bad practice on any board to say, we got more money, we're going to spend more. And that is not, to my knowledge, how we've done any budget. We make the superintendent, the principal, the administrators go and say, okay, here's what you spent this year. You know, what do we really need to spend it next year? We have the bunch of things we go through. Labor, our biggest thing. We do that in negotiations. You know, think of how we go through the books or different practices like that. So, you know, we've talked about this both in terms of expenditures for labor and others that, you know, if the budget gets so tight or your deficit spending, then yes, now you're constrained, you can't spend the money you have. But the fact that you have a surplus never justifies just spending money. You have to have a reason to spend the money. So I don't think, I personally don't think that should affect whether people are going to approve expenditures. And we're going to do it today. We're going to go through the budget items the way they are, and I'm sure other people have questions. I asked a bunch of questions like, why is this going up or why is this going down? So that we have some feeling for whether we should be approving the expenditures or not, right, as put in the proposed budget. And once the budget is approved, we look at it on a monthly basis and ask the same questions. Why are you going over budget on this? We've done that a bunch of times. And, you know, we took it out. We're going to spend less here and we're spending more here, whatever happens. But I just think it gives a false sense of what our real financial is or whether people
So what
rely on
happens
us.
if, okay, we put it in, and what happens if our collection rate drops to 92%?
Well, what's the likelihood?
Then
of
we're
that
gonna have a
happening?
deficit.
True.
I'm just saying.
That could, if
You
it
never
happens,
know.
we're gonna have a
Right.
Well, we know that.
Then we're gonna say, should, you know, so what are we gonna,
Why would the collections go to 92%?
Well, yeah, I'm just throwing that out
The
there. Or
state's
it
unpredictable.
drops to 98, drops to 97. We moved the collection rate up now in the budget to 99. So now, what happens if on a 1% variance on that?
200,000.
There you go.
And that's
And you
that
don't know
amount.
unless we ask the Cook County assessor to give us each individual property owners to see who paid their bills, go line by line and see who's got a receivable with the Cook County assessors 10 years, each year back to see, and then we put a probability of collection on those individuals. Do we know that the North Riverside Mall is making payments in? I don't know. I'm just saying that you're not going to know your revenue unless you go and look at the individual listing of individuals to see who has paid the 2016, 2017, 2018 bills and who hasn't, and who's going to go to a tax sale and who's going to go to a foreclosure.
Is there a negative of putting any money that comes in July and August in the September budget?
So then you're going to start that slippery slope to do it every year. And you're going to be able to manage through that? I don't know.
I'm comfortable keeping the practice as it is, just because of what you're saying, Gary. The state is so unpredictable. And I'm sure this is a conversation that happens across a lot of school districts in Illinois, just given the way Illinois functions.
But we're
So
talking
I'm
about two different
comfortable,
things.
but I'm comfortable
But hold
keeping
on.
it the way we
You
are.
mixed up apples and oranges when you said that. I'm not disagreeing with the payments from the state.
Right.
We don't know, we gotta go based on what we think it's gonna be. He was talking about property tax payments.
Well, I'm
And
comfortable keeping this the way we're doing it because I don't trust the state.
The state has nothing to do with
I know
property
you-
taxes, it's the county.
The county.
And it's
But-
people, what's the chances, I mean, Gary did that to make an example. It's not gonna go from 98 or 99 to 92. I mean, the chances of that are zero.
So if it goes from 99.5 to 98, what's the impact on our school district?
$300,000.
Yeah.
Which is the amount of money you're talking about.
We've been fortunate
And we
to
just
not
moved our
have-
budget up to 99.
99%.
Where were we budgeting before?
And we
99.
came
99.5.
above budget after we moved it up.
But we've been real fortunate to have things stable.
Well,
3 years ago, when houses were being foreclosed on and we could see abandoned house, when we were running for election, Gary said He and Cindy walked the block and could see empty houses on every block. We've been real fortunate in the last few years where money is being collected at this rate. But anything can happen. We've seen it too in our tenure.
Well, if people have a problem with looking at the last 5 years, the way I suggested to compare how we budgeted for just the operating revenues and expenses and the surplus or deficit and how it came in an actual.
Don't you have that already in the budget?
I could probably get that pretty
No,
quick.
the summary page on 73, isn't that
Oh, it
kind
might
of?
be.
It doesn't break down.
It doesn't break down the taxes, but it does
That's what we
show.
were trying to get.
Tim, I'd agree with that proposal. Maybe what we can do is like, we can control the expenditures, we can't control the collections, but somehow, maybe in our budget, when we approve the budget, we have, okay, but we say it's 98%, and plus or minus whatever, 1 or 2%, how's that going to affect things, right? Then we really can't project a deficit, but we can project a range of deficit or surplus based on the
So if we get
past.
like 97%, that's
Right.
98% that.
So you take the median collection and plus or minus, this is what it's going to be, so we can't really predict it, but we think it's going to be
It'll within this
balanced
range.
based on this expenditure. Because it is uncertain.
Do you have a problem if he does that for 5 years?
Yeah, it could break out what the basis of it is, but what we can't
It's
do
only-
is predict the future.
No, I
Toys R Us
understand
went
that. But it doesn't
bankrupt.
hurt to
Is that going to be an
see what
open
it is.
location? Is that one of our tax bases?
If who goes bankrupt?
Tony's moved out. I mean, we got certain major retailers who
Carson's
currently
is
get,
gone.
Carson's is gone. So is that gonna, is that
Sears
tax
is going
base at
down.
the mall gonna shrink significantly? And then,
Well,
I mean,
Sears is gone.
But hold
I mean,
on a second.
I'm just trying to raise an issue that we raised our collection rate to 99% this year.
But then if you want to go into whether, just like people foreclosing, in a foreclosure sale, the people buying the property have to pay the property taxes. So you're going to collect them. Aside from student debt, property taxes are the one thing that you're going to collect. It might be delayed. Somebody else owns the mall, right? They lease the space out. The owner of the mall is paying the property tax.
That's why we have but then
Right.
they come through and they petition to the county and say this mall is not worth as much as you've assessed
Right.
it. And that's what goes and it gets caught up and that's why we had that refund, pending refunds going on. I think we got burned with Sears, when Sears moved out, that we had a refund, a major amount of money back to them. So I'm just,
We got 2 months,
So we can think about-
to keep the
let's get to the-
conversation moving,
yeah.
I think we got 2 months before September. I think Scott can easily break out over the last 5 years what we projected the budget to be and then what it came in on June 30th. That's an easy chart to complete. Hearing from the board, it sounds like it's about a 4-3 split on what practice to use. It seems like the current board, the majorities are saying keep current practice. But let's wait and see what he does on the breakout. Let's see what other adjustments come in, what comes in from the treasurer, and then we can discuss this again next month.
I would also like to recommend that before Scott brings it to the board, that maybe the financial
Council.
advisory committee have this discussion too, to see if there's something that might be missing.
I usually send them stuff when Scott gets those, so I will take care of that.
So maybe you have that conversation ahead of time.
so Scott, you raised an issue with the testing. What do you mean now that that's going to be used? I don't understand what you were saying when you said that.
Oh, and
In the activity fund.
the activity one? Yes, for the different exams, the AP exams, the PSAT, and the National Merit, and the ACT prep, all the test costs for those go out of activity, but also all the revenue goes in for that. If you look at some of the different years, for example, in 17-18, we had rental supplies to get our tables and chairs. In the previous years, it was not billed. It was billed to a board account. And after looking at it and getting everything in order, anything that comes in for those particular tests and the fees coming into the activity, all the expenditures will come out of that activity account. Whereas in previous years, if you notice, the rental, some proctor's expenses,
So it
whatever.
validates my rationale to not have it as a separate activity account, but to move it into the board accounts. That way, you don't forget that things don't slip through the crack, and we know the revenue was put into, we know the expenditures got expended through
But the problem with doing
There's quite a
a
few
board account,
refunds.
there's a significant amount of refunds that are issued. And so to issue credits back from a board account is kind of an accounting nightmare.
I would-
Individual students that don't take an AP exam get the money credited back.
Because what I'm saying is, aren't we gonna collect fees this year for testing?
Well, yes, but
So then,
After-
so you're gonna use 60 plus?
No, but I
plus
think
it'll
what
be
he's-
spent down in years.
I think
Plus the
what-
amount of revenue we're gonna get this coming year.
So
Go
there-
ahead, Chris.
So there are a few other points. $20,000 of the balance also comes from the Arthur Foundation. We received a grant over 10 years ago, and that's particularly used to get students to be college ready. I don't have the information as to exactly how we obtained that grant or where it came from. And so that is earmarked for that. So the account is not, the balance isn't as high. And then other things to keep in mind, the PSAT/NMSQT is a national merit test. So that, for example, is something that students sign up for in October. And then we pay all the costs out of there. So that's optional for sophomores and juniors. So we can't really budget for that. We have no idea of which students are going to take that and which students are not. Also, if you look at AP, we charge student fees for that, but this year we were a negative balance, and that is really like the difference between some of the years too, as we had recently raised their fees. But that is incredibly difficult to budget for because you don't know how many proctors are needed. That's based off of how many accommodations we have and things of that nature. And with the testing going on for 2 weeks, that's difficult. We wouldn't be able to project that right now in the summer. So those are, and then the ACT prep is something that we do after school or before school, and students that attend all of their sessions also get a refund as an incentive for them to coming to all of those sessions. So students get a refund for that activity as well. So there's a considerable amount between that activity and the AP exam and kids that choose not to take that of refunds too that we issue out of this account.
Maybe you can help us on two things you said. The payments, credits you give out of this, they go through the impressed account then, right?
No, they go through the activity.
So there's a whole nother set of checks that you write that we don't see, is what you're saying, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and do we, somewhere in the budget, on a total basis even, show the activity in this,
You don't see the individual
do we see the
detail,
total?
you just see the ins and outs on a monthly basis.
For the total, for the
Yes.
whole, like.
For that account.
Yeah, so if, like, the football and the cheerleaders paid something out or took something in, they would be part of the, they'd go on to a total for this activity account that does go in.
Mhm.
And that does hit the budget then, right?
No.
No, it's out of strictly activity.
So it's just showing, this report's all we get on the activity?
Yes.
That's it. The in and out monthly.
So if you wanted to accommodate both, which is a need to do an easier way of managing this, and have the board having control, which they have the fiduciary duty for that, could you put a line item in the budget for what we expect to take in and take out on that account? For the whole thing, the whole activity, not on a line basis, but on the whole thing? Kind of like you do with Aramark?
I think they just told us they don't know how much is gonna come out, depending on refunds.
So when we're charging an AP fee, that goes into this account,
Yes.
and we don't budget any of that in our.
No.
Nope, nothing's in the board budget.
And
Because
so if you
typically,
think-
majority of that AP fee is paid directly to the college board eventually.
If you look, we have $60,000 left over after this school year. We were -10 over already. So once you start taking out, if you take that Arthur Foundation grant, which is $20,000, which is gonna pay the CAP coordinator, really we have a balance of 40. So if we start paying all the proctors, the tables, and the rentals,
It's gonna be
that
spent
surplus
down.
is gonna be spent, should be spent down rather quickly in the next 2 to 3 years. It should be running.
So right now, historically, the board accounts have been paying for the proctors, and even though we were putting the fees into this account.
Correct. That's why you see a surplus of 17,000 in 15-16, and then 5,000 in 16-17.
And I think what happened was with the transition between Tim and Scott, some of what got charged to the board and what got charged to the activity account got a little lost in translation. So we put together a spreadsheet that specifically outlines what costs come out of the activity account, which is why you see, a deficit of a negative $10,000 that was spent this year in terms of the net expenses.
Well, let me ask a different question then. Is there a way to, this report's always a mess anyway, because instead of dropping in Excel and getting the numbers right, you have to tell us to do negatives when they're positive or negative. But is there a way of listing which of these accounts are actually expenditures for school activities versus like the clubs? So we'd at least know that.
I can work on something.
Because if, if it's the ecology club who has a $2,500 balance, they're doing fundraisers or whatever, and they're buying T-shirts or whatever they are. I don't think, except that we have to make sure they follow the rules that you're doing for us. We need to know about that, but
the majority
to be honest, on the
of
other stuff, we keep finding out about these other little tricks that we have of, we have this fund that we put here, and we spend money on this and here, and
the biggest thing is we shifted all the fees from activity to the board account.
You did
for the
you did a
student
major
fees.
cleanup last year, and I
That
appreciate
was-
the fact that you moved a lot of that were in the activity accounts before into the board accounts. Then I appreciate that. And I just thought this would be another one. Can you go back and say, okay, 2017, I didn't charge this testing account for tables and for proxies. This account owes the board $13,000.
You can do that.
We'd have to figure out which account was
What
missed.
account?
I know you could do that. I'm saying,
It's just
could
a
you
matter
fiscally
of
go
going
back?
back and then
So what you're saying, if in order for this to go
Reimbursement.
down
I think
from,
the
in
easiest
order
one-
for this to go down to 40,000, what you're saying now is that we're running testing at a loss. On the upcoming year, we're going to be running this at a loss.
Well, right off the bat,
Most likely.
we have to start charging the CAP coordinator to this account. For the last 2 years, we charged the CAP coordinator to the general stipend account. So that right there was $6,000 each year. So that's $12,000. So we don't know how many table rentals we'll need or practice.
No, I understand that. That's you can approximate, right? But you can look at historical trends and say, okay, historically we have X number of sophomores taking the test, we have X number. We have a pattern that we get roughly X percent asking for refunds and approximating things. I understand that. All right, I'm beating it long enough.
Scott, do you have any other questions on your CFO report?
no.
Okay, FOIA request. We had one FOIA request. Tim Walsh submitted a question. We did talk to that gentleman prior when we submitted this, and he preferred the newer contract compared to the current contract because there was only 17 days left.
okay, thank you.
There's no update on police radios. I think that should take us to consent agenda or visitors' comments.
All right, visitors' comments. Does anyone wish to speak? Great, then I will not have to read my long dissertation with visitor statement has to do. All right, let's go on to, anyone have any additional discussion items to discuss? No, looking both ways, no? All right, let's go to the consent agenda, approval of minutes. Could I get somebody to read the resolution?
Resolved, the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby takes the following action on the listed consent agenda items. Approves minutes from the meetings held on June 12, 2018, open and closed, as presented and amended in the July 10th, 2018 board agenda packet.
Second. All right, we have any discussion on the minutes? Any issues? Are there issues? No? We'll go for the vote.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Mr. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes. We have old business, life safety items, capital improvements.
No,
anything?
no updates. All revenues have been paid, all expenditures are paid out from the previous life safety. We're doing individual projects this summer to address current life safety items. But there is nothing new to report since what we touched on in June.
All right, tentative budget.
Scott's going to go through with you, and then he had some questions. So it's questions submitted from Mr. Walsh. The thing I want to draw your attention to is we did update special ed in June when the board approved the tentative budget. They approved a deficit of just over $300,000. Based on the adjustments you'll see tonight, the proposed deficit is now down to $200,000. We'll do another sheet that will include these and any additional ones we need to make once we start school in August. So basically, this is like the tracking document that we keep from June when we approved the tentative through September when we post the final budget for approval. Scott will be tweaking these in the tentative budget that's posted online, and that will continue to be available to the public all the way through September. But instead of giving you a new budget every time, we'll track the documents this way, or the changes this way, so that you can see them and it summarizes them.
Can I ask a question? Are we going to, we have to approve this and get it out in the public in order to meet the timeline that's required, right?
Yes, it's got to be
Got to do it today.
public for 30 days.
And we're not going to change anything from what you sent out on Friday?
No. I just wanted to send that out with the actuals in it from June 30th, and then with these adjustments done in it.
Gary, I have a suggestion.
You're asking to
What if we not go
approve.
through all the questions today and just approve it the way that he put it out, and he can go through and send us something that answers the questions before the next board meeting? What do
That's
you
fine,
think
but I
about
think you
that?
should summarize some items, because I think there's some people in the audience who'd be interested to know if you funded certain sport. So if you can,
That's not in the budget.
Here's my question for you, though, Scott. I don't think we need to take action every time you update the tentative budget. The board approves the tentative budget in June so that we have a budget to work off of for June, or for July, August, September. So they don't, every time you bring them proposed changes, they don't need to approve another tentative budget tonight, another tentative budget in August.
Oh.
So we don't need to approve anything tonight. We just need to tell them, hey, here's the updates we're making and here's why we're making it.
Yes.
And we're
it's
keeping this summary
okay.
for you so that it comes September, we can go through all these changes and tell you either here's why the deficit increased or here's why the deficit decreased.
And to my question, I want all my questions answered, but you can take a month to go through them, and
I got them.
people can decide whether we want to make adjustments or not. How does that sound?
I would just touch on the big ones,
Yeah.
the ones that are of significance. Why don't you go over your budget adjustments?
Okay. If we just look at the adjustments that are out there, I know at the previous month when I adjusted the expenditure side, I didn't have the figures to adjust the revenue side. Private facility, that's based off of our FY19 revenue is based off of our FY18 cost. So I had to wait to get my total cost for that to be able to budget for it. As far as budgeting wise, I have the remaining payment from this current FY18 in there, and then I'm expecting 3 payments for next year's budget in 19. That's how I came up with the figure to try to be as close as I can to what I think the state is going to reimburse. The actuals that are out there in this, like I said earlier, we did receive the 2 payments that were remaining from FY17 and got 3 payments for FY18, making 5 payments. Normally, we get 4.
That's why you're proposing, even though the actual was 341, for 2018, you're proposing only 285 next year,
Yes.
because you got an extra payment that you don't expect to get.
I'm not expecting the extra payment. And that's the same thing with the room and board on that one.
Well, that one you're proposing.
It's very close to the
exactly what you
actual.
did. So you're expecting
And
what
based off
happened
of
this
our
year to be the same next year.
based off of our FY18 costs, And based off the federal reimbursement rate of 90%, that is the right-on number.
Okay.
Pay to participate sports, a $5,000 increase. I know the actual was a little higher that came in. As a reminder on this one, though, you get all the current year stuff, and any parents who had payment plans, you collect past fees that were outstanding. So I'm not 100% sure how many were current versus what was the past due fees that came in.
But we're not going to have less students or sports next year. We're going to have more sports.
You're going to have
right?
more.
So why do we think it's going to go down?
It's not going down.
No.
I have it increased from what was previously budgeted versus
Yeah.
the actual, yes, it's going down.
I'm looking at what came
Actual
in at
versus
18
budget.
versus what you're budgeting. You're budgeting 10,000 less than what we collected this year. And we're going to have more sports.
But that don't mean we'll have more athletes. Those kids could be shifting over from one sport to another.
We estimate we're going to have less. That's why we're coming in 10,000. I'm trying to see why I'm talking about. What's the logic in it's coming in less next year? We have more sports.
But we also
But-
have a higher waived fee.
Wait, he explained it. He budgeted 160, 175 came in.
Right.
But he said he doesn't know how many
I
of
don't know
those
how
were
much
past due
past due fees
fees
that were
from
on
previous
parents that were on
years
payment
that parents
plans.
Okay, but let's compare it to what we did with, that's the same thing we said about the taxes. Whatever it is, why do we expect next year to be different than last year?
on the actual side.
Yeah. Because every year some people pay after, I assume. That
Scott,
happened
why don't
last
you
year.
do your 3-year historical on that and see what that should be?
I mean, this is what I'm talking about when I said we always underestimated. I don't see, all your answers don't give a basis of why we think we're going to collect less money next year. We have more sports.
Okay.
More than last year. So if last year the freshman class was the largest, right? Is this one going to be larger or smaller?
Smaller.
Smaller.
By how many
We're,
students?
right now, we're projected to be about the same enrollment. It'll
Yeah.
depend on transfers, but, because you also have to look at how big the outgoing class was as well.
Right, but I think the freshman class is considerably bigger than the outgoing class, right?
In terms of enrollment, I think we're, depending on transfers, we are expected to be somewhat around the same.
Yeah.
But transfers is the variable.
But we expect to be very close to last year, right? So we're having more sports, we're having the same number of students. I don't understand why we think we're going to collect less. It's just one example of, that filters down on the rest of them too.
I understand, but I could go through other fee accounts and say, we collected less. I should go down on fee accounts.
You could do that, but you
I mean,
highlighted this
exactly.
one, and this one, we know what we collected last year now. We have the same number of students, we have more sports. Why, you haven't said one reason why you think we're going to collect less next year than this year. If anything, without going through an analysis, you would expect to be at least the same, right? That's my point. Yes, you could go through every line and maybe we could argue about it. I don't want to. I'm saying you highlighted this one and we're going down and I don't understand what the basis is for it. And if you do 10 of them like that, that's $100,000. And we have a $240,000 deficit or $200,000.
But I could also go 10 the other way. Not, you know.
You know what, Scott, if you want to do that, I will come in and sit down, but then you go through each one and explain the reason for it. I'm aggravated because you answer it, you didn't provide a reason why it's going down.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, based on what we know, it shouldn't go down. So if you want to go through and say, I want to go through a whole bunch and they should go up or down, that's fine.
All right, so you'll go back and review that.
Let's do a 3-year, what's the rules that we follow when Scott and I do budget? So we do either a 3-year historical or we call the service provider. Like with the utilities, even though he has on here, he used actuals, he also called the service provider, the utility companies to get their projections.
That's helpful.
So let him do a 3-year historical on what fee collections have been, and
You know what, I don't want him to go through every line where there's a $10,000 difference and spend time historical. I'm pointing out the fact that you're not providing a justification why this is going down on one where you're
Tim,
going down.
Tim, if we want, I don't think it's appropriate for the board to right now go after a particular employee If we feel this report is not done well enough, or we need more justification, then maybe we need to ask Kevin to get some more justification for these numbers and some more explanation.
We will have that at the August meeting on some of the questions that were submitted. Scott, any other ones you want to highlight?
Just be mindful that after going through costs for next year with special education tuition, there is also an increase in that line item from the previous one that you saw.
And Kristen specifically reported on, she looked at the incoming class for that one, right, Kristen? Or
I
somebody
do
did.
not, our director of
Somebody-
special ed
somebody
worked
did.
with Scott on
Yes.
that.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
Okay, anything else, Scott? And then there were a couple questions submitted that you had some general answers. I'd stick to the big ones here. Does page 69 is from the old budget that was put in by accident, correct?
Yes. I really don't know what to go through. I answered all of the questions with it. If it's easier to send it through via a Friday update to the board,
I would do that.
if you would like that.
Okay, we
can
could do
that
that.
too.
You had a couple columns that were just at 0% change, but they showed there was a change from budget to actual. Did we fix those formulas?
Yes.
Okay.
So there, but that wasn't, you fixed it, but that wasn't provided to the board yet, right?
No.
So will it be-
Everything will be adjusted and posted tomorrow.
I'll
With
send
what
an
wasn't working-
updated copy of the budget to the
Or
board.
can we approve it?
You don't need to approve it. The board approved
We've
the
already
tentative.
approved the budget, right? We're gonna make
budget.
changes to this,
You don't-
right?
Right. So they'll send
Because
it.
not all changes are incorporated into this.
Mary Ann
figure,
just has it in there as a
This
general.
was
You don't
the
have to
old
keep approving
version.
a tentative
I've
every
made
time.
changes to the budget, it's just not in the board book.
No, you don't do that till September, the final.
So
The other one's on public notice.
I
right now.
mentioned
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
in conversation last meeting that if we were to approve lacrosse, it would change the budget,
Yes.
right? So you have not reflected any change for lacrosse in here yet because we have not approved?
Board has not
lacrosse?
taken action on the cross, so it's not in there.
Okay. So once we take action, you're gonna, you would have to amend the budget,
I would
right?
I'll
For
put
the
it on
costs associated with
the,
lacrosse,
I'll put it on
right?
the changes to the tracking document and have that going.
All right, just,
So I have,
okay.
so I have dead brain cells. We sent this out for public notice last month.
Board approved the tentative
No,
budget.
it hasn't been public notice. Just,
Hold on. You guys are confusing each other. The board approved the tentative budget in June. It is now sitting on our website for public view. It has to sit out there for at least 30 days before you can approve the final budget. So that's going to sit out there July, August, until the second week of September. Before the September meeting, when we have the budget hearing, he puts in the newspaper that we're doing the formal public notice that there's going to be a hearing to approve the final budget. So it's technically out there.
We approved that last month.
Correct.
Put it out there for the
Correct.
public to view it.
Correct.
Okay. So yes, we don't have to go through all this.
Correct, that's what I stated earlier,
I
correct.
got it now. So I'd suggest we,
I'll send
Give you a
out,
chance to go through
let
it.
Scott tighten up the budget with the changes he made
Yeah.
from the corrections identified, and then he'll post that online, and I'll send the board an email copy of the updated budget. Press
Scott.
policy, okay, I'm sorry, John.
I mean, we've gained $100,000, haven't we?
We're gonna spend it in about 2 minutes.
we are.
Gary's
I was
just
just saying
waiting
in
to
the big
spend it.
picture, it's a good day.
It's a good day, yes,
It's
John.
decreased 100,000 with
Correct.
a few adjustments to looking at the actuals to,
And to summarize his adjustments, if you look at that, 182,000 of that, 180,000 of that is from state payments that we can't predict. Policy, Gary?
Let's move on. We're done with the tentative budget. Let's move on. Press policy issue 98.
No updates. The Board Policy Advisory Council, the Superintendent's Policy Advisory Council met tonight. I'll have this for approval in August.
Okay. We got new business, payment of bills.
There are only 2 questions submitted. Scott, can you touch on those 2 questions?
Yes. First question was on board book, the payment of bills, board book. Oh God, what was this one? It was on Chromebook cases for our FY19 order for $9,800. I'm not sure what page it was, but
Bubble case 2 black on 153.
153
And the other question?
was on the check listing for a professional development on cultural competency training. This professional development will be for our staff. We'll be using Title II grant money to cover the cost of the training.
Kristen, do you know what that cultural competency training is? Do you want to give an update to the board of what that is?
Sure. So the person will be coming in October and providing training to the staff on that October Institute. And so cultural competency centers on the skills and the knowledge that are required to effectively serve students in the classroom, specifically from diverse cultures. And so this person will be spending a full day with us to provide training on some culturally responsive strategies within the classroom to help us close some of the achievement gaps that may exist with our minority students. Additionally, they will be providing juniors who are interested with a free SAT math session on Saturday, October 27th, which is based off of her book, Math Phobia, Strategies to Overcoming Apathy and Improving Student Performance. Mrs. Lindquist, our assistant principal of curriculum and instruction, has had the pleasure of hearing this presenter previous at her other district and spoke very highly of her. And so we're excited to have the speaker come.
Who is it?
Dr. Lotus
Ferrer. It's on the list.
It's on the list in the board packet.
Ferrer. It's on page 161. So, I'm sorry, did you explain the 9,900?
The bubble case is for the Chromebooks. So every year we give a case to incoming freshmen for Chromebooks.
Oh, was that included in the budget for the
Yes.
Chromebooks? Okay. I don't remember seeing that item.
It wasn't specifically an item, but it was approved under the technology budget.
And what do you have budgeted for the software upgrade in this year's budget?
For
Township's software?
Only like
5,000 or
5,000.
something.
No, it was like 12.
Because you already spent it, right?
We spent, I think, about 8,200, 8,250 for the first installment payment, and I think it's like 12 grand for this current.
So you're covered, you know what
It's
they're gonna charge
it's
you
in
this
there.
year, and you already got it, okay.
Mhm.
They sent us that 3-year or
for it.
4-year for
All right, let's go on to
lacrosse.
lacrosse proposal.
Spending money.
All right, so if you could turn to page
We voted.
151 of the
We voted.
He never spends money, look at that.
Oh, wait, we got to vote on the bills, Mary Ann.
Oh, yeah, we gotta vote on the bills, let's get the bills. Can we get a resolution for the bills?
We read it. Oh. Resolved, the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the payment of bills as presented and listed in the July 10, 2018 Board Agenda Packet.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Oh, any questions, any more additional questions? All right, let's go for the vote.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. All right.
Kristen, why don't you just summarize the lacrosse proposal on page... I think-
171.
Yeah, 171 is the summary.
So this is a follow-up from our presentation at the June board meeting. Tonight we're asking for the board to approve 2 paid coaches, one for the girls JV lacrosse team and one for the boys JV lacrosse team, which is approximately $6,283 each. We would also ask then as a designation that we would be able to approve or check the box that lacrosse would be a sport and they would compete at the JV level for IHSA. And then we're also requesting that the district cover lacrosse transportation, operation, and protective equipment costs. I'd like to point out the charts that outline the detail costs have been updated to specifically show what amount from the lacrosse activity account that we would use to offset those costs for the protective gear. All the other information has remained the same. So as you look through the chart, as we discussed at the last board meeting, it's approximately $20,000 for operation, but after we collect student fees and we offset some of those costs with the lacrosse activity account and things like that, it would be a little over $9,000 in terms of the cost to the district. By designating it as a sport as well, the coaches would be able to reach out to the boosters to help offset the cost for the balls and any uniform costs that they need to purchase.
You said the safety equipment's actually included in the budget, right? You said you want the board to pay for transportation and protective equipment, but the protective equipment was already included, wasn't it?
It was, but if you can see under revenue, I added for the girls and the boys, I added revenue, and that revenue is coming from the lacrosse activity account, from the fundraising that they've done.
No.
So that helps offset the...
I wasn't worried about the cost. I'm saying that the only part of the budget that's not included here is transportation, right?
Not just transportation, it's also the game workers and the game officials.
Okay,
So
but
that
not the
piece.
equipment. You said something about the board paying for protective equipment. That's in this budget though, right?
That in the tentative budget?
In this
Or in this
presentation you gave us.
It's listed, yes,
listed,
but it's,
okay.
that cost
Yeah.
is now, we've actually reflected that it's offset by the lacrosse
Yeah,
activity account.
Again, I don't.
So last time we were-
Transportation and game workers are not covered in this anticipation. So even though it shows about $10,700 for overall cost to the district, there's additional costs for transportation and game workers.
Right.
That are not
Nothing
included.
else.
Is that true or not true?
No, that's not true.
Because it's in there, it's listed.
in there.
So it's 10.7 is the expected cost to the board. 7 games.
Okay.
Transportation, bus, okay. So overall, the district is being asked to pick up the additional expense for next year of $10,700 approximately. Let's use the word approximately. And then there was one question submitted from Wes Smithing about, he wants to encourage us providing helmets for the girls. Is that correct, Mr. Smithing?
That's correct.
So we looked into that. We received a response from the IHSA. The girls cannot officially wear helmets. They can wear protective headgear, which is somewhat similar to helmets. But those, the approved ones cost about $150. So if we had 20 girls come out, that would be, roughly $3,000. That's before any, discounts from purchasing helmets in volume. The retail $150.
So they can't wear specifically helmets, but there is an approved headgear.
Correct.
So worst case scenario, if the board,
How does the sport tell you can't wear a helmet? That doesn't make any sense.
the national.
Well, because
Somebody
I
could get
view it
hurt on
as
the
if
other
some
team.
girls had helmets and some girls didn't.
Right.
You
And
could
it's a
be
traditional
willing to
helmet
spare
and you
them.
go and you hit
Headbutting.
heads, then the girl who didn't have a helmet would
Get hurt
obviously.
worse.
I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's the 4th largest concussion sport that there is. I think they need to reevaluate their sport. And I'd rather budget for it when it comes around than not. So.
Well, we could put that,
Because the sticks hurt when they hit you in the head.
we could put that in the budget, but I think, I don't want the board to think, hey, we're gonna wear helmets if they won't allow one team to wear helmets and the other team not to.
Well, I told you, I don't want to micromanage whether you wear the helmets or not. I'm just going to tell you I encourage it, and I want to be able to pay for it if we.
So we should anticipate an additional $3,000 to $4,000 for girls' safety equipment. So at the end of the day, let's say $14,000 from the board.
I mean, I think
run
that's
girls and
quickly
boys
going to
lacrosse.
change, and we'll see what happens
You
in
play
2 years.
lacrosse, yeah?
Yeah.
So do the other teams that you play, do the girls wear the protective headgear? No.
You see like maybe one.
Yeah, because that girl probably had a concussion.
Yeah, but it's not common to wear the helmets.
Could we maybe just track it throughout next year and just see?
Sure.
I mean, we can put the money there. It's
Yeah.
not a problem. We'll put the money.
Yeah.
We can't literally grab these girls,
Oh, of
wrestle them
course.
down to the ground and put a helmet on their head.
like I said, I don't want
Let's
to
at least
micromanage
track
that,
it just
but I
to
want to be able
see.
to.
All right, let's,
Is the board in favor of, so instead of 10.7, 14.7, if we need to
Fine.
buy additional equipment?
Fine.
For safety issues?
Yes.
all right, can we get a resolution?
Resolved, the Board of Education, Township High School District 2A, Cook County, Illinois, hereby approves the boys and girls lacrosse as junior varsity IHSA sport for the 2018-19 school year at Riverside Brookfield High School as presented in the July 10, 2018 board agenda pack.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Go for, any other additional discussions regarding lacrosse? No, go for the vote.
Ms. Sierra.
Yes.
Mr. Smithing.
Yes.
Mr. Honor.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Ms. Ruska.
Yes.
Dr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Rich.
Yes.
Okay, lacrosse is sport next year.
Very exciting.
Run while you can.
Good luck, ladies.
All right, matters for closed session. Personnel, student discipline, purchase or lease of real property, probable imminent and pending litigation, collective negotiations, school safety. This is a second opportunity for visitors to make comments. Seeing none, no visitors. I guess I can get discussion items or consideration for future meetings.
No, I was going to read the resolution.
Hold on, is there anyone, items for future meetings?
No.
All right, can we get the resolution?
Okay, I'll read
Close.
it. Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, student discipline, purchase or lease of real property, probable or imminent or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
Get a second?
Second.
Go for the vote. Tim, Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Smithing.
Yes.
Ms. Towner.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Ms. Ruska.
Yes.
Dr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Sierra. Mr. Rich.
Yes.
Normal travel time?